So last time I talked about thought-stopping cliches. Set of words, it's a phrase that you throw at someone, and it's designed to end the discussion, end the critical road they're going down, end their challenge, their questioning of of whatever, your authority, your belief system. It's not meant to engage in good faith. It's not meant to acknowledge the legitimacy or acknowledge the um the good faith or good intentions of the person bringing the challenge or bringing the questioning. It's meant to shut them down and often make them feel bad for even going down this line, making them feel like stupid or immoral for coming up to this, for going down this road of challenge or doubt. And the thought stopping cliche is compelling in the moment. It's designed to be, of course, but if you analyze, if you continue thinking, if you defy its intentions by continuing to think, and you discount the truckload of assumptions that have to be held in order for the cliche to have any legitimacy or coherency. If you throw out all those prepackaged assumptions aside as well, the thought stopping cliche falls apart pretty quickly. It's not an argument. It's not anything that's meant to legitimately convey information or to get a point across. It's designed to shut you up and stop your critical thinking in your tracks. And a very common phrase that I consider thought stopping cliche. And if you're either a current traditional Catholic, or B, used to be, or C, just follow them, it's undeniable that you're very familiar with these two words, with this argument: 2,000 years. The 2,000-year history of the church, supposedly, right, is that it was founded by Jesus himself, God made man, when he, said to Peter, "Upon this rock I'll build my church." And that length of time is meant to carry weight. There's meant to be an authority in and of itself there, because you think, what's when you challenge the belief system of the church or its authority, or their worldview, or whether they truly do have this divine connection, or whether they truly are the people who understand the world completely or and truly. The 2,000-year history of the church is thrown at you like, oh, you're going to doubt an institution that's been around that long. You're going to doubt the wisdom of the church fathers, people who've spent the last 2,000 years, again, with the assumption there of that Christ's, God's care and his grace is all undergirding all of this, right? So many assumptions there. that thought that thought stopping cliche of 2,000 years is meant to, again, make you feel small, make your questions seem insignificant, make your doubts seem unimportant when compared to that history. So let's first of all just take their framework, their dubious framework of, it's been an unbroken tradition from the time of Jesus up until the Second Vatican Council, very dubious. If you just take that on face value, and you look at this as an argument from longevity, right? Immediately that argument goes out the window when you say, okay, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Taoism, and Judaism. I mean, Christianity can't exist without the tradition of Judaism coming before it, which still exists to this day. You take all those things into account, and when they say, when they bring up the 2,000-year history of the church, it's like, so what? It- we Judaism is still here. Taoism, people still practice that. Hinduism, people still practice that. Zoroastrianism, people, you'd be surprised, people do practice that still. Freddie Mercury was a Zoroastrian. And so just on the face of it, immediately right there, that longevity argument doesn't make any sense. But there's an assumption built into that argument. It assume it There's an assumption there that 2,000 years is actually an impressive amount of time at all. Like if you look at the totality of human history, and not just human history, the history of the planet, of the universe, of existence, it's like I've said before. I've gotten pushback from people in the comments sometimes who say, "Well, I'm a traditional Catholic, so not Catholic, and I'm not a young Earth creationist." You know, the young Earth creationists within traditional Catholicism are constantly pointing to, this statement of the Pope, this statement of this council or this church father, or this Pope, whatever, that seems to have, from what they're presenting, the definitive stamp of approval on it from back then. And so, and they all, the early church definitely operated under a very, very inaccurate framework of how the universe operated. And so to think that an institution that's been around for 2,000 years, and therefore that amount of time gives them legitimacy, gives them structure, gives them authority, means that what they say is true. That is such a willfully blind, purposely myopic understanding of how history, like, for example, maybe this is a comparison I can make that'll make this point seem a bit more clear. I mentioned Zoroastrianism. Their god is called Ahura Mazda. He's a being of pure light and pure goodness. But in the early Zoroastrian writings, Ahura Mazda had a parent, Zurvan, which was time itself. The idea of a parent god, or God having some sort of you know origin or creator, and the reason that concept seems so much more, I guess, I'm not saying I'm a Zoroastrian, I'm just saying that that notion seems so much more powerful to me, and to make so much more sense, is because the more you study history and the more you study science and the geology and the fossil record, and you realize things that you take into account the fact that for tens of thousands of years, humans were just uh, living, operating with stone tools and not writing anything down. Humans have been around not writing, not creating, just kind of existing for far longer than we've actually been doing shit, than we've actually been building things and writing things down. That is all very, very recent, in terms of human development. When you look at the totality of it, yeah, the sheer amount of time that things really take, and the sheer amount of time that we've been here, is so incomprehensible to our little minds that, yeah, the idea that time itself is a divine entity really, really speaks to me, because our our attempts to sort of quantify things and to measure things in our clocks and our calendars, those are attempts to, structure and order life, which we need to do. We need to structure our lives, we need to order it, but we can't think that that structure that we create for ourselves is reality. That, what time is it? It's 3:34. That that there's like cosmically written into existence right now the numbers three, three, and four as to what time it actually is, because that's just what we're using. That's our time zone. It's a different time in a different part of the world, but that's accurate for them, right? You have to, you know, acknowledge the totality of everything, the totality of the length of the age of the earth, and of course, you're undoubtedly, invariably going to become a young earth creationist if you uh, dedicate yourself to traditional Catholicism. It's just inevitable. And so, therefore, the reality, though, the reality of the age of the earth, of the amount of time that humans were not engaging intelligibly, really, or intelligibly in terms of, what we're doing today in terms of civilization, right? The amount of times when humans were just sort of existing with our stone tools and in our caves, that is most of human existence. And so, maybe beating a dead horse here a little bit, but this is all just to say that I there's so many things that you see when you step out for, like I did, step out for just a second of the framework that traditional Catholicism imposes, the way you have to see the world that it imposes on you, and that will translate not just to how you behave, but how you believe but what you believe about the origin of the world and of the history of the earth. And if you if you insist on accepting these early church fathers' beliefs about the geocentrism and the young earth and all of that, discounting the information that they didn't have that we have now, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You can't expect to be taken seriously if you continuously refuse to adjust your framework, to adjust your view of reality, to think that maybe these church fathers, despite what you believe about their connection to Jesus, despite what you believe about their authority, there's just nothing substantive to it. It's just so easy to see how it all falls apart when you step out of the structure that they live. When the church was formed, they were operating off of far less information than we have today. And so you can't even to some degree blame them, but you can blame the people today who are refusing to to, to acknowledge the value of anything outside of itself. You can see how the traditional Catholics are throwing a fit and losing their minds over what Francis said about all religions can are pathways to God, and all religions are legitimate. Basically, they don't work under that framework. That they're the only possessors of truth. They're the only people who should be listened to really about anything, right? And so, because they hold ultimate morality, they hold ultimate knowledge. But if you look at them and you see them thinking that 2,000 years is an amount of time that is that amount of time adds authority, adds weight, it invokes awe, invokes, wow, these people, 2,000 years, they really understand the world. No, 2,000 years is nothing. Uh, in the totality of existence, it's that. It's a blink of, it's my eyes blinking. That's the amount of time 2,000 years really is. And you're just not impressed by that when you step out of their framework, and you lay aside all the assumptions that you need to have about the assumptions about the, the cosmos operating the way the church thought it did, whether or not uh, Jesus said the things that he spoke. I think he really existed, but he never picked up a pen, wrote anything down. Um, there's many things he says in the Gospels that contradict each other. So I think many of of the statements supposedly of Jesus are highly questionable, just historically, and I can't unsee that. I just I would have to uh, for me to ever like for the people in the comments who are like, come back to Catholicism, and it's like, but not not that kind of Catholicism, right? Don't go back to a Novus Ordo church, which I tried to do for a while after I stopped being a traditional Catholic. You know, it's no, you have to, but your refusal to understand facts, certain facts about the way the world works that you're refusing to because you're told to because of the dogma of your church. I can't unsee certain things. You know, I can't unknow the reality of uh, just I've experienced, you know, and not just through personal experience, but through factual knowledge, things that just can't work within, can't operate within the framework that traditional Catholics present. And I would argue that applies also to mainstream normal Catholicism, but I have no real quarrel. I'm not again. I'm not going after mainstream Catholicism, the structure of it, because I don't see it as destructive in the world. I see traditional Catholicism very much as being destructive in the world because they think they can save the world. They think that they're the only people who know how to save the world. And that's destructive cult 101. And so this whole point of this whole video was, you know, just to make this take this one little um, thing, this one little statement of, you know, the 2,000 years and why that's a thought-stopping cliche and all that. But there's just a broader point too to be made of it. There's so when you just accept that we're all struggling here, every human being is in a state of searching of not being, you know, fully in tuned or connected with ultimate truth. That's such a freeing thing. It's a little scary at first, but when you accept that reality, it's just it's like okay, there's a relief to that in a sense because it's like we're all really on the same page. And when you lock yourself into this, no, we're not all on the same page, everyone except us is not only wrong but evil because all the gods of the Gentiles are devils according to traditional Catholics. So any person who's not a traditional Catholic, uh, they're not just incorrect; they're evil because they're worshiping devils. It's literally what they think. Just listen to them. Your your path forward is only destructive, and you can't expect to be taken seriously, and you can't expect at some point to not be mocked and ridiculed and derided because of the mission you're on. We're talking about traditional Catholicism here, not mainstream, because they're not on that mission. But traditional Catholics are on that mission. They're on this mission to save the world by imposing the social reign of Christ the King. And you're not going to do that if you're unwilling to understand that 2,000 years is no amount of time at all in the grand scheme of things. And your arguments just become uh, just fall apart like that, and your right to be taken seriously falls apart like that. I respect I deeply disagree with the mainstream Catholic Church and their beliefs, but because of how they operate, because of their overall aura and framework, I you know, I'm powerless to do anything about it, but I don't feel like I don't feel like the mainstream Catholic Church um is worth fighting against, is worth resisting, is worth pointing out um as something bad completely that you should have nothing to do with. that is the case for traditional Catholicism. It is just too wrapped in with all these other false beliefs, this other myopic, all these destructive mindsets that's just woven into it all too deeply for it to be worth saving or worth leaving alone. The mainstream Catholic Church under Francis and those who will be like him in the future is at the end of the day much more of a, I'm not going to say it's more of a force for good than bad. It's much less of a force for bad and negativity than traditional Catholicism is. And that's why I keep doing this. So that's all for now, and I hope you fly away to victory.